or it sometimes will even decide I've had too much, and it'll then send signals to try to make you realize you're satiated. And then that gets very complex. You gets into very complex mechanisms that are already known about satiation. But it's not a just on or off. It's very closely regulated by insulin levels, for example, and glucose levels. In cancer, there will be some mutations that will alter that flux or those change in levels of activity, so that it will be chronically on, maybe at just a low level, but the chronic activation, which is no longer regulated, will contribute to improper regulation of that cell's growth.
Yeah, it makes sense. So it's under natural circumstances, you expect the system to be waxing and waning according to all of the other sort of rhythms of life that are happening on circadian timescales and things like that. Like in a normal natural situation, you would really never expect mTOR to sort of always be on at some chronically elevated level.
Right. Unless you're eating too much or
Yeah,
not
yeah.
exercising enough, all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay, and then so inching towards the study that you guys did, I know that as you said, sort of, there's this patchwork of how complete our knowledge is of the different sort of aspects of mTOR and how it works. We know more about how certain nutrients activate and regulate the system than others, and there's been sort of some blind spots here. We know about certain amino acids that affect mTOR. I'm sure we know a lot about glucose and sugars, but it sounds like, based on my reading of your paper, that we one of the blind spots here has really been how fatty acids and particular fatty acids tie into mTOR and affect the mTOR system. So can you give me just like a basic sense of like what are the nutrients where we have a pretty solid understanding for how they plug into the mTOR system, and what were some of the blind spots here as it relates to dietary fats?
Sure. So I think as you hinted at before, Piers, and as John explained, so I think the mechanisms for how mTOR is activated by amino acid availability and also glucose availability is fairly well established, and I think we certainly have a clear picture of the exact proteins and the pathways that are involved in that regulation. And actually, there's a lot of crosstalk between the core regulatory mechanisms for these different nutrients. But I think fundamentally we have a very clear idea of how glucose and certain amino acids at least activate mTOR. Yeah, when it comes to fats and lipids as a whole, we think that's been a bit of a blind spot in all this. I think some contributing factors when you think of lipids as an entire kind of class of nutrients, they're extremely diverse.
Right.
They have different cellular localization patterns, different functions as well. So I think within that class as a whole, you have all these different offshoots about how each lipid class or subclass could regulate cell function. The specific class of nutrients that we were curious to study were these essential fatty acids.